My name is Tom. I'm the lead pastor here, and I want to be the first to welcome you today. All of you in the house, what a great day we have here. I also want to say hello to everybody who is watching online right now. Welcome, welcome. So glad that you are here too. So really quick, for all the people who are watching online, I want to let you know we have hosts online that are there for you. Anything that you need, just reach out to them. Put your comment in the chat section there. You can even be prayed for. You can ask questions about the church. All that stuff is available to you. You can follow along online to our message this morning. And so just so glad that you joined us. And for everyone who is here, I want to say the same thing. Maybe you're here for the first time, and we are especially grateful that you are here. So a couple things we would ask for you, maybe three things. First of all, just sit back and enjoy and be comfortable. You're never going to be put on the spot. We want you to know that we've prepared for visitors every single week, and so we hope that you find this a safe and comfortable space for you. Number two, we would, if you're comfortable, love to know a little bit about you. And just if this is your first time here, we have a QR code that you can scan. We call it our Guest Connect card. We will not spam you, I promise. We will not contact you by phone, I promise, unless you ask us to. We just would love to have a record of your visit, and you could let us know anything you want to on that card as well. And third, we have a gift for you. If you go out after the service to a spot that we call Guest Central, we have our famous Hope Church cup, and it's filled with some information and some candy, and we just want to say thank you for being here this morning. Now, hey, this is a season in church, as you know, that gets really, really busy, and I want to tell you a little bit about that today. It's our kind of our main announcement as Easter is coming up. So next Saturday, March 23rd, we start off the week with something we're calling Easter Jam. This is, we have never done an Easter Jam event before, but we are doing it this year, and we're excited. There's a ton of people registered already. Maybe that's a bunch of you, maybe your friends from the community, and basically here's what it is. Starting at 10 a.m. next week, we invite you and your family and your guests to join us. We are going to have a fun time right in this auditorium with music and games and just different things families can do together. And then we'll end that in about 40 or 45 minutes. And hopefully, weather permitting, we are going to go outside and have an incredible Easter egg hunt, and we're also serving food that day, and also I hear there's a special appearance by somebody very special coming on that day too. So if you have not registered yet, first of all, go online, cthope.com. You will see all the links that you need to there, and then invite some friends with you. If you don't want to come on your own, invite your friends. It should be a fun couple hours of your morning. And then that following week, if we get into like Thursday and Friday, we start to celebrate really kind of the last week of Jesus' life. This is, again, a lot of churches, a lot of denominations. We call it Holy Week. But Thursday and Friday night is going to be special. We're going to set up this building for a thing we're calling a journey to the cross. And you have an option. You could come for 10 minutes. You could stay for 3 hours. But on Thursday and Friday, we're opening our building from 5:30 to 8:30 each of those nights. And you are going to get a chance to experience and connect with God in a way maybe that you have never thought about or never tried. You're going to be able to taste, feel, smell, touch, and it's kind of a completely kind of an immersive experience, and we hope that'll be special for those of you who want that. Just that reminder, that meditative reminder. It's a little different than what we typically do, but I think it would be a real blessing if you try it out. Now, I will say this event you do not have to register for. You could just show up. It's probably not for young children. I would say elementary age and up, more than welcome, and we'll have some things that will make that practical for the whole family, but again, probably not for the littlest of kids. And then finally, we kick it off a week later, so 2 weeks from today, on Easter Sunday, we have two identical services, one at 9 a.m. and one at 11 a.m. So again, hopefully you're making plans for that already. I was going through the numbers last night, and definitely they're coming in. We would like for you to register so we can be prepared. And so that 9 o'clock service is filling up. There's still plenty of spots in that 11, so make sure you do that as well. All right, I'm about to get off the stage. All in all, we're going to be here for about an hour today. We're going to sing some songs. We're going to finish up in the teaching series that we've been doing called Things You Need to Know But Don't Want to Hear. So excited about that. But apparently it's St. Patrick. To some corned beef and cabbage later. I am not looking forward to that. Even though I have a little bit of Irish in me, that's really not my thing. And did you know that's not really an Irish dish either? That's an American-made thing. So just a little fun fact there. Also, St. Patrick was also not Irish. Did you know that? He was born in like England or Wales or something like that. So it's just interesting how we take these things and adapt them. So anyway, whatever you're doing, I hope you have a fun day, a safe day. I'm going to have you stand up. Just turn around to the people next to you. Maybe tell them what you're doing today. And then we are going to get into some songs, all right?
you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Oh, that is who you are. 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 Oh, that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you
There's been a line from a song that we sang last week in my head all week. And it's, now those altars in the wilderness tell the story of your faithfulness. And those altars aren't gonna be there unless we build them. We just sang, He's the light in the darkness. He's the way maker. The darkness is going to be there. The darkness is all around us, but He's the light. We have to keep our eyes on Him, and we have to build those altars. We need to keep remembering. Write it down. Make a painting. Whatever you need to do, make an altar to remember, even in that darkness, even when we can't see it, He's working. We know He's there.
So in that spirit, let's all just kind of bow our heads, just take a moment. We're just going to move our concentration to whatever it was on before, to our good God. God, whatever people are working through, going through, feeling, I pray that you would be their light this morning, even in this moment. They would just begin to see glimmers of hope. We see glimmers of direction and glimmers of purpose. God, give them courage. I was looking up at verses before coming up here. God, that we would walk courageously through the times that we can't see that you're working or don't feel it. Give us the strength and the ability to place our complete confidence in you. In Jesus' name, amen. You can have a seat. Thank you. Uh-oh, pastor's coming up here. It's going to be a long one. I promise I won't go too long today. Before I start, actually, I wanted to just draw your attention to, and it might have been on there, we've got some resources for you, or maybe, again, you're thinking of a family member or a friend, especially leading up to Easter. We have some resources out at our guest central area. We just have some, we have a little devotional book. It's called New Life. Maybe you want to take a week or two and kind of go through this leading up to Holy Week and into Easter. That might be something for you. And by the way, these are all free. We have another one, again, called The Cross, 10 studies for the Easter season. So there's 10 weeks of something to go through. Maybe you're not really sure about this whole God, church, Easter. What's the history of that? These might be helpful for you. We have a book here called Easter Uncut. Again, totally free. It will tell you the story behind the resurrection. And then I wanted to highlight a resource we have there all of the time. It's called Start Here. I was actually having a conversation with someone recently, and they told me that when they started coming to Hope, again, brand new to church and God and faith and whatever, and they were saying that this is the book that helped them the most. This is, again, available all the time for free at our guest central area. It just takes you through kind of like the basics of who Jesus is, why he came here, what the church is all about, and all that kind of stuff. So feel free to do that, and we'll try to keep those stocked as much as possible. Just want to resource you all the time. We doing okay so far today? Everybody's all right? Okay, good, I like it. Well, listen, sometimes the Bible can be hard to understand. Right? We all know, we've been there, we've opened it up, we're like, what am I reading? It makes no sense to me. But with the book of the Bible that we've been looking at over the last month now, this is the 5th week, this is probably not the case. We're kind of looking at the book of James, and James is one of those authors, it's one of those books where you could pretty much open it up and tell exactly what he's trying to say to us. Here's the problem, though. This is what I've been saying this whole time. It's very possible that we might not like what we end up reading or hearing. And so then we have to figure out what to do with that, right? And so I'm just going to ask you to give James a little bit of grace. And I'm going to ask you to give me and Carrie a little bit of grace in this series, because we've talked about some pretty tough stuff. Because here's the thing. If you're really honest with yourself, no matter who you are, where you're coming from, what your church background is, or what you believe about God, if you're really honest with yourself, you know that you need people in your life who are going to be courageous enough to tell you things that you're blind to. Maybe you really don't want to hear it, but at the end of the day, it's going to be very valuable for you, and you're going to respect that. And so I feel like James does that for us as we look at these topics. You know, we have all have people in our life that do this for us, right? And I said this back in week 1. It could be parents, all right? A lot of teenagers, kids in this room. Sometimes they tell you things that you don't really want to hear. But my word of advice to you, it's probably right, it's probably true, and you should probably start going in that direction, okay? Maybe it's your personal trainer. You know, it's hard to hear what things are like physically, especially as you get older like me. But sometimes you need to hear that thing even though you don't want to. Maybe it's a life coach or a counselor. Or for that matter, maybe it's a pastor. Okay, so there are all these people in our lives that we have it. And so we know that that's important. And the big picture with this whole entire book is James is telling his audience, which applies to people in his day, but also I think really, really applies to people right now, me and you. He wants nothing more than for people, Christians, to become mature in their faith. He tells us that we need to grow up. You know, and again, it's that whole scenario of at a certain point, a baby comes off the milk and starts to eat solid food. And that's kind of how we could look at this. And we start to chew that and digest it, and it makes us strong and healthy, and we become more mature. Because here's the thing, when we live differently, you know this, people notice it. And when we talk differently, people notice it. And even though sometimes people might look at you a little weird, because maybe you're not kind of going with the norm, you're not going with the flow, here's what I found in my experience. The truth of it is, oftentimes people kind of file that back in their brains, and they really respect and admire someone who's kind of making some stands. They kind of know where they are, they kind of know where they're going. And my experience is at a certain point, they might come to you and say, you know, you're different, man. You talk different, you act, like, what's that all about? And you have a chance to share how Jesus changed your life. So we've looked at 4 things so far, and these are really, really hard things. Maybe you're coming in for the first time, so we're going to give you some kind of perspective of what we've been traveling through. Again, so based around this idea of maturity, the first week we talked that as we become mature, we could tell someone who's mature by the way they suffer. I know that sounds so crazy and that's so weird, but mature people suffer well because trials, temptations, hard situations are going to be present for all of us. How are we going to walk through those maturely? We can tell the difference with a mature person and a not so mature person in those kinds of scenarios. The second week we talked about this. Again, another really hard one. Mature people realize that they love themselves more than they love other people. And that, again, this is kind of a weird one for my head anyway. We have to wrestle with this our whole lives. Like, we know automatically, built in, we're going to be keeping an eye on ourselves, our stuff, our tendencies, our wants, what we perceive as our needs, and we often do that to exclusion of other people. And so we need to be really careful of the biases that might form in our hearts and our lives. So that's what we talked about in week 2, hard stuff. Third week did not get any easier. Said this, mature people learn how to control and tame their tongue. This is a hard one for all of us. Again, I feel like every single one of these things we all work through. And we know the difference with a mature person who opens their mouth and with an immature person who opens their mouth, right? Come on, let's just talk for real. Lastly, last week, we said this, mature people don't let wealth and money drive them. We don't let greed drive us. So you start looking at all of these things, our money, our mouth, the way we love other people, the way we suffer. These are really, really, really hard things to get into our hearts and our minds. But it's our goal here at Hope to help not only introduce people to Jesus, but to also help people along in their walk with him. And you'll be working on these for the rest of your life. And that's why I think this book is so important for all of us. And today, we're going to cap it off with one last really hard thing. And so I'm, again, going to just tell you it right off the bat. We're going to jump right into it. And here's the thing. Here's the main point of the day. We've been saying it like this. Here's the thing that you don't want to hear today. It's this. You need to learn how to live in the tension. If you're taking notes, you can write that down. By the way, if you're following online, all those notes are online where you're watching. Mature people have to learn how to live in the tension. What is tension? What is tension? Here's the definition I am working off of today. Tension is this: two pulling forces directly opposing each other that stretch an object and try to pull it apart. Just leave that up there for a minute, Landon. Here's tension. Two pulling forces directly opposing one another that stretch an object and try to pull it apart. Now, how many people in this room would be willing to say, I feel like this sometimes? Come on. Maybe, let's go to something. How many people say, I feel like this all the time? That you have all these tensions in your life. You feel like you are being pulled in every kind of direction, right? A lot of this has to do with people in our lives. A lot of this has to do with the commitments in our lives. And it's like these two opposing forces constantly pulling at each other all over the place. And that usually does not leave us in a good spot. We feel these tensions. Here are some examples maybe. Maybe you feel a tension in your relationship. You feel this tension something like this, like you want to be fully yourself, but also you want to give all of yourself to another person. Again, fill in the blank, whatever that means for you, but some of you, I know, are feeling that tension today. How do I be me? How do I be all that I'm supposed to be or all I think God has called me to be, and also make space and make room that we're to be fully entwined in another person's life, right? You might have this tension when it comes to money. You want to, and you know that you should save money, but you also have this pull towards giving, right? So there's a tension in our lives often where we're like, we know we want to give, we know we want to be all God wants us to be, we want to give to, but we also need money for ourselves and we want to save and put away because we don't know what's going to happen. That's a tension that real people like you and me face in our life. Here's another one, parenting. Okay, maybe you're a parent in here. You know that at some point, the tension for you is going to be you have to send your child off into the world to make their way in the world, but at the same time, you don't know that they're ready and you need to protect them and you need to really figure that out, and that has created a tension in your life. Are people feeling me on this? Okay. Personality, maybe. You know that you should be friendly and hang out with other people and try to put that in your life, but you also hate people at the same time and don't want to be around them. You just want to stay home and watch Netflix and chill, just like, that's a tension though, right? Let's be honest. Some of us, we love people, but we hate people at the same time. And it strikes me that when we read the book of James, okay, when we look at James, and as we enter into this last chapter, which is, there's 5 chapters in James, we're going to look at some verses in chapter 5. It strikes me that when we read this book, one of two things happens, or maybe both. James's goal is to actually speak into the tensions we're feeling very directly. We've talked about a lot of these things, okay? He's actually speaking into those very directly, and actually it makes us uncomfortable at points, or he says something that just creates a whole lot of more tensions in our life, right? It's really hard stuff. And this is the journey of becoming mature in Jesus. We are never going to have it all figured out, people. Please hear me when I say that. There is no perfect person at Hope Church, but we all ought to be working towards how we get closer to God's heart in it. And this was James' heart. And in order to be mature and walk through these things in the right way, mature people have to learn how to live in the tension of that, because bad news, it's never going away. Here are some tensions that James talks about throughout the book. Here's the thing, too, about this book. I said this in week 1. All of these themes that we talk about just kind of constantly keep repeating back and forth, chapter to chapter. It kind of just flows. He kind of just like goes off, and sometimes he'll take left turns, and then he comes back right and gets on his word. So here are some of the ones we've even looked at as we've read it. He goes, make sure your faith is in God alone. This is in chapter 1. Don't waver or don't have divided loyalties. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything you do. Do you see the tension there? We have these two different kingdoms, God, the world, all this tension in between. What do we do with that? He brings up another tension in that chapter. Remember when you're being tempted, don't say God is tempting me. Temptation comes from our own desires. Don't be misled. Okay, is this God's fault? Is this somebody else's fault? Is this my fault? I don't know. I'm confused. I just feel pulled. I don't know what to do. This is a tension he speaks into. He goes in chapter 2. He talks about this tension. I won't get into all this between faith and good works. Like, what's better? What's more important? No, and he's like, both are important, but there's a tension between that in this book. He comes back in chapter 4 and says, your loyalty is divided between God and the world. You see what I'm saying here? There's all these tensions that he's bringing up, and he wants us to be able to walk in that way. And so here's the thing you don't want to hear. You have to learn how to live in the tension of life, because that's what mature people learn how to do. It's not easy, but we need to learn how to do it. And so when we get to James chapter 5, in my mind, he speaks directly into the idea that we live in the tension, and he gives us some final instructions. Now, I want to do just a little bit of illustration here. I'm going to ask my boys, Patrick and Brian, to come up. Are you guys here? Come on up. Come on up. Give these guys a hand. I want you to grab that rope. They volunteered to help me with this, and I appreciate it. So just come back in here. One of you take one end of this rope. One of you take another somewhere in here, okay? Now, here's what you're going to do. Brian's on this side. Everyone's going to cheer for Brian. Over here, everyone's going to cheer for Patrick, and they're having a major tug of war right now, okay? No, I'm just kidding. No, we're not going to do that. That would be bad. But I want you to pull on this rope. I am jealous of their muscles too, man. Both of these guys. Pull on that rope so there's a little bit of tension, guys. This is just our visual today. There's nothing big about this. Now, remember, tension is two pulling forces here, directly opposing each other, that stretch an object and try to pull it apart. Now, I have to say, if I was betting money on this, I'm not really sure where I would place my bets. Yeah? Okay. Tension. This is how we feel sometimes, right? The forces are pulling. Pull back on me a little bit. Yeah. Oh, yeah, not too much. Yeah. Whoa. And I'm on a slippery rug. Tension, right? Come on, pull a little bit more, you guys. Use those muscles. Yeah. Now, don't go crazy, but listen. Does not life feel like this sometimes? Come on. Does not life feel like this sometimes? And we feel like, check this 90s title of my sermon out. Oh, snap. Because sometimes that's how we feel. We have two opposing forces in our life, two opposing ideas in our head, two worlds that we're trying to live in the tension of. And it's not going away. Christians, it is not going away. And we need to learn how to live in the tension. Now, a tension is a force that's pulling. Look at them. They're pulling. Now, here's a fun thing. Push that rope towards each other. That's weird, right? That's a different kind of sermon topic right there, the push, right? But pulling is opposing forces. I was also, maybe I'll get to that in a second, because I had a thought with this too. But Christian especially, remember, James is talking specifically to people who have said, I'm following Jesus, I'm following the way. You are going to feel the tension of the pull of God in your life. You're God in this, the world, the devil, I don't know. You are being pulled between two systems. The things that you actually were made for, and also the things that we pursue and desire. And without even realizing it, we want to pull certain things toward us that we know are good for you, and at the very same time, we feel this pull towards things that we probably know aren't very good for us, but we do it anyway. And you know what? By the way, Paul, the Apostle Paul, he's one of the writers of the Bible, actually describes this tension too. He goes, the things that I want to do, I don't do, and the things I don't want to do, I find myself doing. Like, these guys got it. And all of this makes us crazy. Literally. Some of you don't know anymore which way's up or down. It makes you feel like you are going to snap because you can't take it anymore. All right, thank you guys. You could just drop it. I appreciate it. Give them a hand. You're awesome. See, the audience in James' day was dealing with the exact same kinds of tensions. Don't be fooled. Even though we're a few thousand years later, a couple thousand years later, whatever it is, we feel the same tensions. And he wanted his audience, as well as this audience here, to know how to start walking through that. When the world around you is going crazy, when nothing makes sense anymore, when you feel like you're about to lose your mind, when you feel like you're not sure if you can even take a next step, come on, I know some of you are there today. When you feel pulled between two forces and it overwhelms you, this is what James says. Chapter 5, verse 7. Dear brothers and sisters, be patient as you wait for the Lord's return. I want to break this down a little bit because at first glance it might not make total sense. But he's basically saying, don't give up. That's not the option. That's not what mature people will do. Until Jesus comes and takes you back for his own, and he will, by the way, you have to live in the tension. He says, trust me and wait. And he goes on to use this illustration about a farmer who plants all his crops, and now it's out of his control, and he has to just wait on that rain to come, right? And it's a great illustration of what we do. Sometimes we're just waiting for that rain to come, and we get all worked up in the meantime, but yet we know we can't do anything about it. So, that's the phrase. In the meantime, what do you do? Right? The tension is in the meantime, in the waiting. What do you do? And he says, be patient as you wait for the Lord's return. He gives us all these different kinds of commands. Be patient and be courageous and don't grumble and don't speak for God. And it just keeps going and going. That word, patient, means long angered. It means really settling in and trusting, being patient through the process. Long angered as you wait for God's return. Be patient. And I wrote down here, live as if God is in control. Live as if he is in control. He says, be courageous. Another a thing that came up today, even in our song, and even when I don't see it, you working, even when I feel it not working, be courageous during that time. Don't lose heart. Stay in the tension. Third thing he says, don't grumble. You know, it's so easy, I should say, for us to just go in and we just start going back to, talking, the way we talk, right? Like, we need to be careful with our words in the tension. Because sometimes in the meantime, we end up saying things that we ought not to say, or we know we shouldn't say, but it just is. Mature people are thoughtful with their words in that. He goes on with that in that same kind of vein. He goes, don't speak for God and make false promises to God. This is where I think a lot of times we come into this and we start to either blame God or talk about God in ways that aren't honoring him. And this is because it's the tensions really getting to us and we're just like snapping in our brain. Not that God can't handle it and not that you're wrong, but listen, he goes, as you mature in Jesus, these are the things that are going to be markers for you. These are the things that people are going to notice. When you are dealing with the tension, people will look at you because you're going to talk differently, you're going to act differently, you're going to live differently and say, most people would be cursing God. In fact, I'm pretty sure, and I could be wrong about this, I'd have to check myself, I think in that same passage he uses a guy named Job as an example. And if you're familiar with the Bible and you know Job's story, you want to talk about loss. You want to talk about going through the ringer. And again, check me on that, but I'm pretty sure he uses him as an example there. He goes, one of his friends says, just curse God. Just curse God. And yet Job couldn't bring himself to do that. James chapter 5, verse 13. He keeps going here. Suffering hardships, you should pray. Are any of you happy? You should sing praises. Are any of you sick? You should call for the elders of the church to come pray for you, anointing you with oil in the name of the Lord. Such a prayer offered in faith will heal the sick, and the Lord will make you well. And if you have committed any sins, you will be forgiven. Now, we look at that. I think this passage oftentimes is taken out of context. We look at that and we think he's talking about sick, but I would argue that he's not talking about sick people here. Because the word that is actually used most often when it comes to this word, again, the Bible is translated from a different language, is the word weak. It gives the sense of discouragement. It gives the sense of in the meantime. It gives the sense, that we are alone or might even feel depressed. Like mentally we're starting to be unwell because of the tension that we feel in our life. And he says, you know what? If you're feeling that way because of the pull in your life, then here's some more things. Not only should we not grumble and not complain and all of those things that we just talked about, speak for God, be courageous, be patient, all these imperatives. But what he ends up going on and saying, he goes, the other thing you need to do is start praying through this thing. Start praying through it. And I know some of us, our tendency is to not. And I know this sounds maybe like a little bit of a churchy answer, but the truth of the matter is, if we have the high king of the universe who's sovereign over everything and has a plan, and he is the Lord of all, and you call yourself a follower of him, then we ought to turn, and we're encouraged to do so by this guy, James, to him in our prayers. Now, prayer is not a magic potion. We can't stir up all the right ingredients and just have it happen. No, but it's a prayer in faith, recognizing our trust in God. In other words, I'm going back to what I just said. We're giving over control to God. That's what a mature person does. He goes on to say, and by the way, James 1:5 says this. We talked about this the first week. If you need wisdom, because a lot of times that's what we're looking for, ask our generous God and he will give it to you. The next thing I think we see here in that passage is you need to worship through it. Worship through it. What is worship? A lot of times we just think about worship as singing songs. That is not the full idea of worship. Here's what I would say is a better idea of worship, and this is whatever. I might use a different definition another time, but it's giving acknowledgement to God in everything. I heard somebody say one time, you could think of worship, think of it as worth. Think of worth. Are we valuing God in every single thing that we do? In other words, you could worship God at work. Did you know that? When you take the time to do your work well because you value the skills and the abilities and the opportunities that God has given you, you could worship through your work. And by the way, here's another thing. People will see the difference in that, by the way. Man, you work hard. Oh, man, you don't talk about people around the water cooler like everybody else. See, all these different marks start to show up because we're looking at our worship, our life as worship to God, all of it. And finally, and this is important, he says, live in humility through it. Live in humility through it. I think we find that in verse 16. And one of the ways we do that is to open up, and this theme has come through again in this book before. Open up to others humbly. Now, don't go blabbing all your stuff to everyone around you, because you need to be living in community where people are going to open themselves up to you, because you're going to realize, here's what I see over and over again with what I do. People think they're all in this tension by themselves and it's unique to them. And I promise you, it is not. If you look around this room, the people to your right and left are suffering the exact same tensions that you are, some to a greater scale, maybe some to a lesser degree, some with a different spin on it, and maybe not in that moment, but at some point. And that's the value of community. And James comes back to that over and over. That's where he starts talking about, he's like, confess your sins to each other. I don't think he's literally saying, tell everybody that what you did wrong today. He's saying, open up your heart and mind to each other. He goes on to say, we don't do this often. Encourage each other. In a sense, what I'm trying to say is, again, it's this release of control, because now we're being vulnerable with other people. And this is the wisdom of James. This is what mature people do. If prayer is giving over control to God, then I think in a lot of ways, living in humility and vulnerability means giving over some of the control, the perceived control that you have to others, and allowing them to help you hold it. Does this make sense? I told you, though, don't blame me. These are not my words. This is tough stuff, man. And if I look at these 5 things that we've talked through this series, if we could just do 5 things, these 5 things, not a whole list of do's and don'ts, do this, don't do this. And a lot of people think church and God is like, I'm telling you, that's called maturity. That's called fruit. We start to amp that up, the love in our life, and start to have encouragement with others. We start to experience this peace that we can't explain like before all of this, but when we give over control to God, and even in some place others, we start to experience this peace that we haven't had, even maybe a joy. See, tension does not have to wreck you. Tension can be beautiful. Tension can be beautiful. And there's 2 things that come to my head, and I don't even know if I have this in my notes. It's just 2 things. First of all, when those guys were up here on the rope, here's what went through my head. When we're in the tension and we're feeling that pull, again, this is a little outside, so this might make sense, so maybe you just want to get rid of it later, but when you're pulling on something, can I see what's behind me? But we're traveling that way, right? The difference between pull and push is the direction that we're going, but like, this requires a little bit of trust here. And it's funny that I think that God says he's going to light your path kind of one step at a time. You're not going to always be able to see, what the things around us, what's around, in front of us, whatever. And again, I just think kind of an interesting thought. Like, you don't always know where that's going to end up, but if we allow that to, that tension, it's great. And here's the other thing I thought about tension too. Tension can be beautiful. I think about the guitar. Do you know what those strings are doing? It's tension in those strings. And there's reference to how God wants to make your life a beautiful thing. And it's beautiful. And when you have a master guitar player like Nate is amazing, right? And you can make beautiful things out of the tension. And just right, you tighten that thing too much, it's going to snap on you. But when you're able to live in the tension, God can make beautiful things come out of your life that people will see and hear and feel. And that is what we're after. James says, live differently in this world. Be mature. Grow up. And I just want to say that Hope Church wants to help you for yourself. We can't do it for you. I talk about this all the time, but for yourself, how to learn how to get there. God, thank you for this time that we've had together this morning. These are all things, if I'm being honest with myself, that are hard to hear, can make us uncomfortable. This is like weird, and I just would rather ignore it, but I know I need to hear it. And maybe other people would say the same thing. I hope that they have over these last 5 weeks. God, my heart is for the people in this room, for the people that are watching, to know that you want the best for them. That you're a good God. You're not out to get us. You're not out to judge us, to push us down, to keep us down. Instead, you want us to live freely and lightly in the world. God, as we go forward, I pray these things over every single person in this room. God, if we're going through in suffering, help us to suffer well. God, help us to not think of ourselves first, but to put others ahead of ourselves and live in a completely different way. God, help us to control our tongues, even in moments where we want to go off. I pray that we would tame that, because that can ruin a life with the wrong things that we say. God, I pray that we would not be overcome by greed, that you would not let that wreck us or ruin us. And finally, God, that we would walk well in the tension. For all of these things, we will see just a difference, even a little bit at a time, for each person in our life. That they would look at us and say, man, there's something different about that person. We can't do it on our own, and so we trust you with it all. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, well, we are about to wrap up here. Thanks for hanging in there, man. It's been a good morning. I encourage you to stick around for a few minutes. We got coffee still back there, and it's a time that we build intentionally into our Sunday so that you can meet other new people. Listen, I just want to say this before I go, because Easter is approaching, and this is just the kind of person I am. I am so conscientious of people walking through our doors. I want to make sure we are the friendliest place around. And I'm going to talk about this at a certain point. I read a statistic this week, and I believe it to be true, and I have reasons for this, but I read somebody, he's a kind of a church consultant, and he said he has less than 25% of the churches that I visit does one person come up to me and say hi. And when I hear that, it breaks my heart. And so we don't want to be that church, okay, people? So make sure we are looking out for those around us we might not know. Now, that person may be coming here for 10 years. I don't know. Just say hi. That's all you got to do. And then walk out the door, all right? If this is your church, we are supported 100% by your gifts. And so I would encourage you to give today. We make that easy, cthope.online.church. You can also text your gift, 84321, and we have giving boxes in the back. Finally, stay connected to cthope.com/events. You'll see all the things that are going on, especially in this Easter season. And then, as always, we have people up here that will be willing to pray for you after today's service. Don't be shy. They're good people who love you. And if you're walking through something or just want to have someone come alongside you, there'll be some people here in the front to pray with you. Have a great St. Patty's Day. God bless you, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.